On DC Music Rocks, we're shining a spotlight on the great songs, artists, and incredible people behind the DC region's music scene. Rorie is a singer-songwriter crafting music that tells stories of both heartache and hope. Known for poetry lyrics, Rorie and her band create a live music experience that is uplifting and emotional. Her newest EP, Dawn, is a lush combination of electro and cinematic pop, while still maintaining her signature singer-songwriter sound. So it's that marriage that we're talking about. I first came across her when her album, her EP Dawn came through in 2017, and I've been a fan ever since. And so, I mean, I've been following you for a while, so it is really a treat for me to have you here. Thanks for coming and doing this.
Thanks for having me.
And now, so talk about, it's electro and cinematic pop. Like, how does this work? Are you sitting at home with a with a guitar, and then it becomes keyboards, and then it becomes, how does singer-songwriter become what we heard with the album?
Well, I've always been a singer-songwriter, but I had this dream of creating something that sounded kind of more ethereal or cinematic, and so I wrote these songs on the Dawn EP with a guitar or just with a piano, and then I worked with a producer who does a lot of cinematic tracks, and we worked together to kind of create this lush landscape for the songs, and it was kind of a dream come true. So I was very specifically trying to make them sound more lush. But I also have the singer-songwriter side in my heart too, so it's...
Right, I was going to say, you got a little bit of both, and it definitely, I mean, my goodness, it comes through in terms of cinematic style is definitely a style that I would, yes, it sounds like something off a movie soundtrack. That's what I was hearing.
The strings and the synths and other elements. Sort of.
Now, and if folks haven't checked you out, it's Rorie, Rorie.
Yes.
It's Rorie. And where does that name come from?
So it's kind of a funny story. The medium version of the story, medium length version of the story is that...
Strap in. This is the medium length. It could get crazy. Okay.
Growing up, people would tease me and call me Rorie because of the show Gilmore Girls.
Oh.
And the main character in that show, I guess, looked like me and I don't claim to be like a TV character because that's never good, but just certain personality traits were similar. But it kind of got out of hand. Like, someone chased me down at the airport once and said, "Oh my goodness, Rorie, you look like Rorie." And someone in the grocery store said the same thing. And then I went to college, and this group of people who I sort of knew, I didn't know them that well yet, and I found out that they had been calling me Rorie for a year. And it just became this whole thing. So when I wanted to think of a name for my music, and so I ended up, someone joked and said, "Oh, you should use Rorie," and I was like, no. And then I thought about it, and I realized I could change the spelling to differentiate it, and it would still be similar to the letters in my name, which is Aaron Ochaki, and it still felt honest. It still kind of sounded similar to me, and it was a nickname and a joke for years, so it didn't feel too far from my real self. So.
Wow, that's cool. So it's named after a TV character, in a way.
In a way, but now we can forget about that.
Right, and now we can go back to the fact that it's cinematic and lush music landscapes and all, back to the other thing, but absolutely. What's your tie to the DC region? What part of the city do you call home?
I live in Alexandria, Virginia.
Nice. And you've all your life, or came later, or how did it work out?
So I grew up in Northern Virginia, and I've lived in a couple other places and made my way back here in the last couple of years. So.
Nice. Okay, moved around and came back. Now, what's your earliest memory with music?
So I grew up singing in my church choir, and that was like my favorite thing ever. And then over time, I started writing songs and poetry, but I became really shy. So then, as a way to kind of still keep doing music, I realized, I can put these words that I'm writing into music and figure out how to work up the confidence to go perform them, and then it just kind of took off from there.
So where did you first start performing them then? Where did that happen?
The songs? Well, I think I would play songs here and there, but when I went to college, that was when I would get myself to go to open mics and to start playing, and it was kind of a slow process, but then I lived in New York for a while, and I was going out and playing shows a lot there, and that's when I really kind of felt like, I love this so much, I have to keep doing this, and kind of been doing it ever since. So.
And where, you said college, where was college?
I went to Ohio State.
Got it. Okay, so open mics in Ohio, and then playing out in New York, and now living in DC.
Yep.
That's really cool. Now, what about, so talk about the funniest moment that comes to mind when you think about performing. When you've been performing, what's the funniest moment that comes to mind?
Oh, when I've been performing, I can think of funny stories when I wasn't performing.
Oh, yeah? All right, tell us when you weren't performing. We'll come back to the performing
I'm
part.
thinking that nothing funny happens when I perform. It's too serious. We need to spice things up a little bit.
Oh, that's funny. So all this lush cinematic, it's all so serious and dramatic, huh? There's not a...
Well, one time I
humorous
tripped
thing?
over a cable.
Oh.
And I was kind of getting into music and playing shows, and I was moving between my guitar and my keyboard, and I kind of tripped and fell. And it was so humiliating to me. So maybe not funny, but now it's funny because it's the funny story that I tell in all my shows.
Yeah.
So if anything ever happens again, then I can always just use that as a way out.
Oh, yeah.
Funny story out. So.
It's like that one time when I tripped over the cable.
Yeah.
No, when you're, so in your live shows, actually, now that you bring that up, I'm curious. So in your live shows, what will people see if like they come see you at Jam and Java on September 7th? That was Friday. Friday, September 7th, Jam and Java. You're going to be there with, the other group is...
Haley Fahey and Throwing Plates.
Yep, and
yes.
we'll play some of their music a little later. But
yes.
what will they, like, what are you like when you perform? What
Right.
will they see on stage?
So this show is going to be a full band show, and I play with some of my good friends, and we have created we have the tracks, the cinematic tracks and the sounds there, so it'll, like the song Gold, will play it very much like you just heard it, and we like to bring those elements live. And there will be some just regular singer-songwriter songs, and even a little bit of a jazz fusion sound with the guys that I play with.
Oh,
so
cool.
there's a little bit.
You said guys. How many people are on stage?
There's 4 of us all together.
Got it. And the instruments are, who's playing what?
So we have my friend Dwayne Butler on drums, and Michael Riley on electric guitar, and Doug Cruz on bass.
Nice. And then you're going to be either guitar or keys?
Or keys, yes, both.
Got it. Which one was first, guitar or keys?
Keys. I studied that through college, so...
Oh, wow. So Ohio State was music major?
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. And then here you are, you're still, I'm so proud of you for still using your degree. So many people go and then they abandon their degree and they do something else. It's awesome that you're still doing music even after all this time.
I couldn't help it because I was studying other things. I was studying business as well, and I just kept going back to the piano. So there was really no choice in the matter.
So then when did guitar come in?
I've been playing that on and off for years just because it's easy to bring around, and then of course I love it as well. So
right. Okay. So on and off with guitar, but always the keys. Yeah. Now talk about you on the personal side. So outside of music and Rorie music, so it's Aaron outside of music, and what's that life like? What's personal hobbies? What else do you do?
Well, I like to go to the gym. I like to read. Obviously, spend time with people that I love, and I like to write poetry. I guess that's kind of similar to music, but I'm writing a book on the side just for fun. Just for fun.
How does the poet, poetry is a big part, so then how does the poetry then become a song? Do you have a sound and then you're like, oh, I'm going to write words to this? Or is it poetry and then you write music to the words? Or how does that work?
Usually when I write songs, it happens at the same time, the words and the music. But then sometimes I'll write a poem just because it's like a stream of consciousness, the flow of the words. And then I'll use some of those ideas from the poem and put them into a song later. So
nice. So it just depends on how it goes.
I think they're pretty similar.
And for so if they listen to the EP that came out, Dawn, are most of those, they happen at the same time? Or words first and then music, or vice versa?
Same time.
Mostly
the flow, yeah.
Wow.
The emotional flow.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, clearly the cinematic, clearly there's a lot of emotion there. If you're thinking cinematic and all, like, it as I listen to the music and I'm thinking, oh man, there's definitely emotion here and all of that, it comes through in the music. So it comes across very clearly that, yes, emotions and movements and, like, it's not just a college professor talking monotone when I have images of what
that's good.
Songs
yeah,
are.
Don't want that.
No, definitely not. Now, what about your biggest success moment so far? What comes to mind? You as Rorie.
Oh, well, I still feel like I have a long way to go, and there's a lot that I hope to do. But one thing that was cool that happened when I released this last EP was on the day of, a lot of friends and hopefully people that were listening to it started downloading it, and so it climbed into the top 10 charts on the iTunes singer-songwriter page.
Nice.
And that was so exciting to me because it just meant that there was people there and they were listening and they were supporting, and I felt so motivated and thankful, and like I want to make more music now. So it's just exciting when the people are listening and what you're sharing is being received. So
that is really cool. Does that mean that, all right, we're working on another EP now? There's more music that you've got out, or plans? What's the future look like?
I've written an album, so I've written a full-length album, and I hope to take that into the studio in 2019. So
got it. All right, stay tuned. 2019. Yeah. Whenever that comes out, we'll share it here too, because we want everybody to check it out. That would be cool. Now, talk about a time you tried and failed.
Well, they say you're supposed to try 100 times for like every one time you, every time you, there's a quote in my passion planner, because I have a passion planner right now, and it says, like, I've stood on a mountain of no's for one yes. And I was like, well, that's very true about music, and
so true.
Probably a lot of things. But
wait a minute, if they don't know, what's a passion? I'm curious. What's a passion planner?
Well, it's just a planner, and it's called the passion planner. And I think that this entrepreneur, she started it, and it's the way the pages are organized are really good for people pursuing like a creative passion or something that they want to do that might be like a long-term project. And so there's different. There's like your normal day planner, and then there's other sections with quotes and things that are encouraging, or where you can take notes and doodle and whatnot.
Wow.
So yeah.
Cool. All right, I've never heard of a passion planner before. I'm gonna have to check this out.
A little plug.
This is kind of cool. Yeah, whoever that is. Props for the passion planner. There we go. Now, what do you have in your music collection that might surprise us?
Well, growing up, my dad used to take all of his vinyl records, and he would put them onto MP3s and put them on my MP3 players. So I would listen to a lot of things like The Cars or Rush or Boston.
Really?
I'm still not sure if this is like cool or totally nerdy, but I love it. So I've listened to all of that.
Just embrace
stuff.
the nerd. Rory, you gotta embrace the nerd. Yes, we all have it in there. I'm sure I have stuff in my music collection that would really surprise some people with some of the rap and the hip hop that I love, and I love R&B, but yet I'm in a freaking rock grunge blues trio. So yes, collections are weird, but that said, Rush and Boston also have kind of a cinematic vibe, and they're not just basic, so it kind of that sort of makes sense in a way too, even though definitely different from what the kind of music you write. I love that. Now, if you could offer this is my favorite question to ask, if you could offer one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, I think this kind of goes along with the time you tried and failed question, because I never quite answered that, but I've definitely failed before. So I think my advice would be, like, for someone doing music, would be, don't be afraid to write or record that first song, or like film that first video, or start, because even if you might look back 5 years from now and cringe at that first thing, you will never know like where it will go. And I think there is like a viral success thing, which it sometimes happens and is awesome, but there's also like a slow, steady growth that happens in the creative world. And when you have that, it adds depth to your story, and you can be like, well, look how much happened between then and now. So
yeah. And you brought up the fact that I totally let you gloss over and you didn't actually answer the tried and failed question, because I got so darn excited about that passion planner that I totally lost track of my question. So thank you for bringing that up, because I do want you to tell us. So what is the time that you tried and failed? What comes to mind?
Well, there's more than one, but one thing that happened.
You're allowed more than one failure. We already explained. Yep, that's good.
We already covered that. Yes. So disclaimer. But I got scouted for a music audition in Nashville for America's Got Talent, and I went down there and auditioned and didn't make it through, but it was still a great experience. I felt like it gave me, auditioning is different than performing. I mean, you still have to perform the same, but there's a different feeling inside, like I'm auditioning, and so I feel like I gained a lot from that audition experience.
Like what? What did you gain?
Just some kind of confidence. Like, once you go to an audition, you realize how nervous you are, and then it makes performing way less nerve-wracking.
Seriously, this is definitely
Like, at
true.
least this isn't an audition.
When you,
Please
I was gonna
don't
say when
record
you've
me.
been judged, and now when I'm performing, nobody's judging me. They're just
Hopefully
listening
they'll
to what I'm
enjoy it,
doing.
yeah.
So hopefully they like it. Less pressure. I love it. So now, if they want to find out more about you and follow what you're doing and what's happening with Rorie, where do they go?
Yeah, so my website is roriemusic.com. Rorie is Rorie. And then on social media, I'm at Rorie Music.